Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Okay, let us start with the Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudire Nashtaprayeshu Bhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtiki Krishnaya Vasudevaya Devaki Nandanaya Cha Nandagopakumaraya Govindaya Namo Namaha Om Ajnanatimirandasya Jnananjanachalakaya Chakshurunmritam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Sri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupaha Kada Mayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guroho Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagarjatam Sagana Raghunathanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parjana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sagana Lalita Shri Shakhamritamscha Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Rishabhanusute Devi Pranamami Haripriya Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Eva Cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Vishnupadaya Krishna Prishthaya Bhutale Krishna Prishthaya Bhutale Shrimati Bhaktivedanta Swami Namani Namaste Saraswati Dharvani Bhaktani Visheshna Kam Karoti Vachalam Pangam Gangayate Grim Yakripata Mahamandi Shri Gurum Dintaranam Paramananda Madhavam Shri Chaitanya Ishvara Hari Om Tat Sat Hare Krishna. Happy Damodar Mass, all the devotees. Like I mentioned just a few minutes ago, at the conclusion of the class, we'll also do a quick singing of the Damodar Ashtaka. So, whenever convenient, please arrange to have a lamp, and you can either show it at your altar, or you can show the Damodar on your screen. You can see that whatever suits you. So, we are continuing our conversation of the pastimes of Prachinabarhi. Quite a long section, and we are coming to the conclusion, and we are covering chapter 29 today. Chapter 29 is entitled Talks Between Narada and Prachinabarhi. At this particular point in the pastimes, Narad Muni, through the very interesting allegory of Puranjan and Puranjani, has tried to educate King Prachinabarhi about the predicament that he is in. And it is not just that sinful people are in a predicament. The nature of the material world is, because it is full of duality, both piety and sin are still within the realm of material condition. And that is what most people forget to understand, because they have a very shallow understanding of religion and spirituality. Dharmasya tattvo nihito guhaya. The real essence of religion is very deep and profound. It's not very easily understood. And Prachinabarhi was continuing to follow so many Vedic rituals, thinking he was doing the perfect right thing, most desirable thing for himself and for his family, not realizing that he was actually not solving the real problems of life. Prabhupada, in so many of his lectures, especially Prabhupada in the early years, if you listen to any of his classes, Prabhupada gives such basic but such uh, strong classes. The beginning of spiritual life is not so much about discussing high pastimes of Krishna. The beginning of spiritual life is a strong conviction of the futility of material existence based on a bodily conception of life. And Prabhupada spends the majority of his time, either in his classes or in his purports, to drill this point into the head of the Kali Yuga Jivas like us. Because if this point is missed, everything else is missed. Otherwise, we become like what Prachinabarhi is doing. We simply become religious. We may also worship Krishna in a religious way, like others are worshipping various devatas in a religious way without really understanding what is the goal of life. So that is not our objective. Krishna can also be worshipped the way a devata is worshipped. Since I worship Krishna, and I will get some material benefit, and I am happy. Of course, in any case, worshipping Krishna is better than worshipping the devata. Krishna's transcendental position, but motivated worship will not take one very far. It's a very slow process of. So Narad Muni spent so much time explaining this very beautiful allegory. And at certain junctures in the narration of the pastime, he hints, like you, he was like this. King Prachinabarhi didn't quite fully grasp the essence of the message. So as the pastime concluded, the narration of the allegory concluded, Narad Muni, on the request of Prachinabarhi, starts debriefing him on what actually the message was that he was supposed to understand, to ensure he has understood. Sometimes the Guru may give indirect messages, but if the disciple is not very sharp, he may still not grasp it. So Narad Muni wants to make sure. So this is quite a long chapter, but I'm going to give a quick summary because most of the detailed points we have already covered in the previous multiple chapters. So a quick summary should suffice. So as Prachinabarhi requested Narad Muni, I could not fully understand what is the purport of this Puranjan story. Those are very advanced in spiritual knowledge may be able to understand, but somehow I am so attached to materialistic things. So to fully understand and grasp what is it that you are trying to tell me is a bit difficult. So he admits, he takes a humble position. He doesn't argue. Like at the beginning of the Gita, first Arjuna argues, right, before he surrenders. So Prachinabarhi is quite humble. He says, no, I don't understand. Please explain to me. And then as he was approached like this, Narad Muni starts explaining the meaning. So Narad Muni starts by explaining to him that actually this allegory of Puranjan is nothing but the allegory of how the meaning behind the allegory is how the living entity, the soul, is entrapped in material existence. Puranjan, the one who is trying to enjoy the body, he's trapped. Based on his own karma, he's going from body to body to body. Some bodies may be one-legged, two-legged, three-legged, four-legged, many-legged, or even legless. But he's trying to enjoy this, enjoy of the body's transmigration. But this enjoy is always accompanied by the Avigyata, the Supreme Soul, who is actually his eternal friend and well-wisher. But it's very difficult for this living entity who's Bahirmukha, who's always facing outside, to actually connect with his friend and appreciate the good advice that the friend is giving. Because the Puranjan is so busy trying to enjoy the modes of nature, because of falsely identifying himself with the body and being influenced by the modes of nature based on the consciousness of enjoyment, the entity is so bewildered. He forgets his friend. He becomes busy in trying to enjoy. He develops a kind of pramada. Pramada actually technically means madness. But here it is referring to material intelligence or ignorance, which actually is a type of madness. Why madness? If you go to a mental hospital and in a mental hospital, some patients will be there that believe themselves to be somebody who they are not. So one person may say, "Oh, I am Hitler," and everybody else will salute him. Hail Hitler! All other mad people. So this side also mad, that side also mad. So those who misidentify themselves to be somebody they are not are considered deluded. And that is the condition of every living entity within this material world. Ahama, mama. They are deluded by a false sense of identification with the material body and mind. And this is the root cause of the problem. So, of course, all these examples and everything, what are the, who are the various characters in the story and what they represent, all that has been is being explained. But I don't want to go through that because we have already covered that earlier. I want to go through the summary. Very nicely, Narad Muni gives an example to help Prachinabarhi understand the condition of the entrapped living entity. He says that the living entity is just like a dog. He is unable to actually escape himself from the quagmire of samsara. Especially no matter how much pious activity, how much karma the living entity may perform, he will never ever be liberated. In fact, karma is never the solution for misery. This itself is an illusion. Essentially, he's telling Prachinabarhi, the means you have adopted to relieve your misery, and this he had mentioned earlier also in a very explicit verse, actually not going to relieve you from the misery. He says suffering cannot be counteracted by material activity because of the same quality. Just like when we have a troublesome dream, one cannot relieve a troublesome dream with a troublesome hallucination. The only way to counteract a troublesome dream is to wake up from the sleep. So the real reason for our suffering is our illusion, our ignorance, avidya. And that is why the real solution is awakening ourselves to the real identity. This is the only solution. All other apparent so-called solutions are just very superficial remedies on the problem. Correct? So even in a bad dream, we may do so many things to counteract the bad dream temporarily. But still, everything is a hallucination there. It's not going to fix the problem. The real way is to wake up. The ultimate solution to all problems is awakening to Krishna consciousness. Just like in a dream, sometimes we may suffer because we may see a tiger in a dream, a snake in a dream. Actually, there is neither a tiger nor a snake who's actually impacting us. We create such concoctions in our own mind in a subtle form, and we actually suffer the consequences of such things. And we cannot mitigate this kind of a suffering unless we awaken. And that is why, O King Prachinabarhi, the real remedy for suffering living entities is to help him get out of the ignorance which causes him to go through repeated birth and death. Punarapi jananam, punarapi maranam, punarapi janani jathare shayanam. Iha samsare rohistare. Kapaya mamam pahi murare. Oh, no. Take shelter of Govinda. Otherwise, one cannot be delivered from material existence. And Narada explains this to King Prachinabarhi that this karma is not going to be useful. The only way one can actually counteract avidya is that one renders service, devotional service to Vasudeva. Without devotional service to Vasudeva, even if you adopt some type of jnana or some type of detached action, it is not going to counteract the disease of material ignorance at the root. The only real remedy is devotional service, because it works at the root. And what is the root? The root of the disease of material existence is our envy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, which makes us want to be an independent enjoyer. And that propensity, that misdirected propensity, that deviation can only be counteracted by re-establishing the living entity in pure devotional service. That is the antidote to envy, devotional service. Karma and jnana can try to mitigate the intensity of the suffering, and to that extent they may be a little bit useful. Karma even less, jnana maybe a little more, but they cannot fully counteract. And that is why the Bhagavat, which is the topmost scripture, very emphatically recommends that one should adopt devotional service. Unless, the Bhagavatam says, I'm reading this, unless one renders devotional service unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead Vasudeva, one cannot possibly become completely detached from this material world, nor can he possibly manifest real knowledge. So who becomes eligible for real knowledge? A person who is very faithful and is always hearing the glories of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who's always cultivating Krishna consciousness, Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnoho, always chanting the holy name, hearing about the Lord's activities, renders devotional service. He who's cultivating devotion very soon will become fully purified, reawaken his original Krishna consciousness, and actually become eligible to see the Supreme Personality of Godhead face to face. And that is the real worthy aspiration and the only worthy aspiration for living entities. So that is the greatest blessing, to get an opportunity to be in an environment when one can hear and chant the glories of the Supreme Lord. Because it's such nectar. For those who are non-envious, hearing and chanting the glories of the Lord is such a nectar. It is so deeply satisfying. It actually makes one forget all the miseries of life. So if you're wondering that why we are not experiencing that, because we are not yet non-envious. The more non-envious we become, the more our heart will be completely satisfied simply by hearing about the glories of the Supreme Personality of God. The Bhagavatam says one forgets the necessities of life. Hunger and thirst one forgets. Becomes immune to all fear, bhaya, moha. Fear, lamentation, illusion, one becomes like Parikshit Maharaj. You are so absorbed in hearing Harikatha in such a perfect consciousness, you can totally immune to any kind of material suffering, even any bodily demands. But a conditioned living entity who is on a bodily consciousness, so absorbed in his bodily consciousness, that first of all, he has very little time to cultivate Krishna consciousness. And he forgets to take the real medicine, which is Krishna Katha. Idam Shariram parinama peshalam patatyavashyam shatasandhi jarjanam kim aushadam prachasi mudurmate viramayam krishna rasayanam piba. What is the real medicine? Kula Shekhar Alvar says the real medicine is not the medicines of this world. The real medicine is the elixir of Krishna consciousness. Viramayam Krishna Rasayan. Drink the Krishna medicine. And how is Krishna medicine drunk? Through the ears. When pure Hari Katha is heard from the lips of those who are speaking about topics of pure devotion, that is real medicine. Faithful hearing of Hari Katha is a very, very, very powerful medicine. So Narad Muni emphasizes this. Jnanis and karmis cannot understand the Lord only through bhakti. And that is why the supreme activity, Savai Pumsam Paro Dharmo Yato Bhakti Radhokshaja Ahai supreme activity for all individuals is to please the Supreme Personality of Godhead. That is the function. Please the Supreme Lord. Why? Because when the living entity pleases the Lord, automatically he himself becomes fully satisfied, because that is the constitutional position of the living entity. When one waters the root of the tree, automatically the whole tree and branches and every leaf of the tree is nourished. So that is how devotional service is very, very important, and that is the supreme activity. The supreme activity is to please the Lord for the sake of pleasing Him, not to please Him so that we can get something. If we please Him so that we can get something, that means we are not worshipping Him, we are worshipping what we want from Him. So people say, oh God, 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 you become pleased with me, become pleased with me. And when you become pleased with me, you do this for me. That means you are not actually interested in pleasing the Lord. That simply means you want the Lord to be pleased so that He will do what you want Him to do for you. Which means the Lord was simply a means and not the goal. But the Shuddha Bhakta doesn't think like that. The Shuddha Bhakta sees pleasing the Lord as an end. And at a spiritual level, that is the perfect end, because when one pleases the Lord through pure devotional service, automatically in the deepest of one's heart, the soul automatically becomes fully satisfied. Even though externally one may be in a very miserable situation. So these things we have to experience. You should accept it based on the Bhagavad, but if you are able to come to that platform even a little bit, one can actually experience. It's not something very far out. Even sadhakas can experience this, that whenever they are absorbed in selfless service, they can feel a very deep sense of connection and satisfaction. That devotional service. So Narad Muni continues. He gives then another example. Prachinabarhi, he gives an example of a deer. And basically what he says is, in the deer example, he says that just like a male deer and a female deer is wandering around a nice flower garden, enjoying with each other, enjoying the sound of the beautiful bumblebees in the garden. And he's totally unaware that there is a tiger prowling behind, willing to attack. And on the other side, there is a hunter who's about to shoot. Actually, the deer's death is imminent, but the deer is blissfully unaware. And he says that is the condition of a living entity in this world. Actually, as soon as, and Prabhupada this is as soon as the living entity is born, he is rushing full speed towards death. Jatasya hi dhruvar mrityu. Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, for one who is born, death is sure, guaranteed. There's already a fixed time. One is rushing towards that time. It is just a matter of time. One cannot run away from that situation. As every moment is passing, one's lifespan is getting reduced. But one is so unaware, one is not even preparing for that ultimate, for the actual desirable goal of life. So please understand the precarious situation that the living entity is in. On one side, there is death. On one side, there are so many other difficult situations. So don't be so busy in enjoying matter that one becomes totally oblivious to the real goal of it. So, Prachinabarhi, what I am trying to tell you is please give up your attachment to material enjoyment. All your focus of all your religious activity until now is all about material enjoyment. You are aspiring for the same things that what sinful people are aspiring for. It's only that you are aspiring for it from a slightly religious way. But your aspiration is not fundamentally different. You are still trying to please the body and the senses only, and that is not your real identity. So give up this kind of household life, which is fundamentally based on physical attraction. Don't be enamored by these topics, male and female, running around trees, singing songs, and thinking that the real glory of life is to marry, most beautiful lady and have a lot of money. Even the most successful people are so miserable because material success does not give one any happiness. They give one some temporary kick. But the process of material acquisition is itself fraught with so many miseries that the overall experience towards material success is like that of a donkey who for a little bit grass is carrying a huge burden throughout the day. So one gets this much but pays this much. So actually, it's always a loss. So don't chase after this kind of illusory happiness. The king is, wow, oh, Ramana, oh, Narada, I have heard attentively what you have said. This is very interesting. I never thought about it like this. You have given me such knowledge. I had teachers earlier, but my teachers only taught me all this ritualistic religion. They never taught me all this transcendental knowledge. I thought that was all in all. So the Acharya says sometimes even religious teachers may be oblivious because the nature of Maya is such, one becomes so absorbed in fruitive activity that even munis and sages they forget what is the real purpose of religion. Like Shukracharya, the spiritual master of the demons, when Bali Maharaj wanted to surrender to Vishnu, he said, no, don't surrender to Vishnu and take away all your wealth. Bali Maharaj was smart. He said, no, no, no. This is not the advice of Guru. He doesn't instruct. He was very smart. He was smarter than the Guru because he was a pure devotee. And he was a descendant of Prahlad. So Prachinabarhi is saying, I never learned this. You have dissipated all my doubts. Now I understand. Perhaps they were not aware of this. That's why they did not explain it to me. But there's one question I have for you, Narada. I accept whatever you have said. I know what is the difference between bhakti and karma and jnana, and I see how bhakti is the topmost. And I can even understand from what you have explained that even so-called sages are also bewildered about the real goal of life. Living entities in generally are totally bewildered. And actually what you said makes sense because sense gratification cannot be the goal of life. Like the Bhagavatam says that the goal of dharma is not kama. My question to you, Narad Muni, is that living entities, you said, whatever karma they perform, you said, if I kill animals now, I have to suffer in the next life. But I don't understand is if the body is going to be totally destroyed, how is it possible that I will suffer in my next life? So now he asks a very, very fundamental basic question. And the basic question is, if everything is going to perish and the body who performed the activity is going to perish, so how is this kind of a suffering possible? So Narad Muni gives a very detailed answer, but essentially what Narad Muni explains to him is that please understand And it's a very beautiful, deep analysis he makes. I'm going to give a very brief summary. The key point he says is, please understand the process of transmigration. Even though the gross body is given up by the living entity, all the karma that is performed by the living entity, including his desires, his mentality, everything is there within the subtle body, and the subtle body is not given up at the time of death. The living entity carries his conceptions, his karma, his mentality from one body to another through his subtle body. And in great detail, Narada Muni explains this whole process. And one interesting example he says is subtle body, which is comprised of all these 16 transformations. The 10 types of senses, the 5 sense objects, the tanmatras, the senses, the 5 elements, the mind. All of these 16 items are transformed within the subtle body. And within the subtle body, all these impressions and karmas are there. And at the time of death is the subtle body which carries the soul from one physical body to another. And there is a nice, interesting example. Just like a caterpillar, when it goes from one leaf to another, the caterpillar holds onto one leaf and extends itself to another leaf. And only when it has gripped the other leaf properly, it loosens the grip on the previous leaf. I don't know whether you have ever observed this. I have in my childhood. It's a very interesting phenomenon. Similarly, at the time of death, the subtle body, based on one's karma and desires, has already decided what is the next gross form, based on his karma, based on his desires. And it gives up one gross form and then gradually move towards occupying another body. Karma is not destroyed with the destruction of the body. Karma goes with the subtle body. And it gets reactivated. And do not think that one's desires also die with the body. Sometimes it may appear that one's desires have disappeared. For example, the child is very young. It may appear that the child has no lust. But is it that the child has no lust? The Bhagavatam explains is not that the child has no lust, but unless the senses are mature and developed, those kind of desires are not expressed within the body. It is there, but it is stored. It cannot manifest itself. It doesn't go away. Similarly, when one is in deep sleep, one's desires and senses may be inactive. That doesn't mean one's karma or one's attachments go away. No. All this deep-rooted contamination which is stored within the subtle body can be removed only through the process of devotional service. All these impressions are stored within the subtle body. And that is why through devotional service, Cheto Darpanam Arjanam Bhava Mahadava Nirvapanam Shriyah Kairava Chandrika Vitaranam Vidyavadu Jivanam Anandam Buddhivardhanam Pratipadam Purnamrita Swadanam Sarvatmasnapanam Param Vijayate Shri Krishna Sankirtanam. Sarva Atmasnapan. One has to cleanse the soul from the contamination which is stored within the subtle body. And how does that happen? Shri Krishna Sankirtanam. When one chants the glories of the Lord, the name, fame, pastimes, and glories of the Lord in the association of devotees, then one is cleansed completely. Sarvatmasnapana. Complete. Sarvatmasnapana. Snapan means bathing. Atmasnapan. Cleansing the soul. The soul, of course, is clean by nature, but when the soul gets covered over by dirt, its real glory is not manifest. Just like the sun, it gets covered over by the clouds, its glory is not manifest. It's need to clean this dust. So a lot of points are mentioned here where He explains in various ways how this whole process works. But essentially, the summum bonum is what we discussed, that all these desires are always in the subtle body. Sometimes they manifest, sometimes they're not manifest. And that is why sometimes living entities, even sadhakas, make this mistake that just because they think that with age, my materialistic desires will go away. They think that with age, materialistic desires will go away. Desires do not go away simply with age. Of course, with age, some other things also may happen with us and we may become mature. That's a different thing. Simply by growing old, one doesn't become free from material desires. If the senses become weak, the manifestation of those desires may not happen to the same strength because the mind cannot express the desires unless the senses are strong. That is just a temporary impediment. When the living entity gets again another young and energetic body, becomes mature, all those corresponding desires will again come back. Foolish people think that, oh, right now I have all these bad qualities, but next lifetime I'll get a body full of good qualities. Nothing like that is going to happen. Because the quality is inherently, of course, it may be manifested in the gross body, but the ultimate software is in your subtle body. If you copy the same software from one hardware to another hardware, the same software is going to be there on the other hardware. No? It's going to behave same way. Correct? Have any of you done this? You have one laptop, then you buy another laptop, you do a cloning of this laptop onto the other one. Whole software and the data, everything gets copied over. It's a new machine, but it has all the same garbage which was on the old machine. All the same useless data, all the same bugs, all the same viruses, everything is going to be same. It doesn't change like that. Sometimes living entities have this foolish idea, I will automatically become purified. Nothing happens automatically. One has to make a focused effort to purify. And Narada is very clear, karma has very limited efficacy in terms of purification. Of course, karma is better than vikarma. Punya is better than doing pap, definitely. But it is not adequate to alleviate misery and overcome illusion. Never. No matter even if you do good karma for millions of lifetimes. It will not. And that is why Vedanta, the end of Vedic knowledge, tells the living entity, don't waste your time with these fruitive activities. Go beyond. Veda Anta, the end of knowledge, is to understand your Swarupa. So he's impelling Prachinabarhi. That's the direction you have to go. That's the direction you have to go. Don't be entrapped in this sense enjoyment. This whole material world is going to be created repeatedly and destroyed. Look at it and understand it, what it is, for what it is. Don't be attached. The world is not an illusion. That the world is for your enjoyment is the illusion. People say the world is illusion. No, what is the illusion? The illusion is not that the world doesn't exist. The illusion or the Maya is that the world is for your enjoyment, that you are the body. The goal of life is to enjoy the body, mind, and senses. That is Maya. So just like the Lord who's creating this entire cosmic manifestations remains aloof, similarly, living entity should also remain aloof, even when he's in this body and in this material world. And that aloofness is possible practically only through devotional service. Otherwise, one gets sucked into that materialistic culture. Unless one cultivates through the process of devotional service the consciousness that everything belongs to Krishna and should be used for Krishna's service, one will always have the bhoga vritti that this is for my enjoyment. This is for my enjoyment. That's why we are supposed to worship or establish the Lord in our home. Because the strong consciousness of the householder is this is my home for my enjoyment and my family and my wealth. I, me, and mine. But instead of us, when we keep the Lord in the center and say, okay, everything that is cooked here first goes to Him. All new items that we bring in this house go to Him. Gradually one understands, so actually, I am not the enjoyer, He's the enjoyer. I only enjoy the prasad. Prasad. Once Gaurang Prabhu was telling a story. He said he was a pujari in the Radha Gopinath temple. He was doing some seva. One person came. He was a boxer. So he came to the puja. He didn't know that Gaurang Prabhu is an IIT engineer. He said, "Oh, Panditji, idhar aao. Come here." He said, "Take this, you offer this to Krishna." He gave him a bag. He said, "What is this?" "This is boxing gloves." He said, "Oh, boxing gloves." Yeah, I'm a boxer. So I bought this new boxing gloves for myself. So he said, no, we don't offer boxing gloves to Krishna. He said, "Oh, Panditji, who asked you to think? You don't think. I heard in the Gita class, everything should be offered to Krishna. So you just do your job. You just keep that in front of the Lord." And so Gaurang Prabhu was laughing. And he, of course, offered it because he had that positive sentiment. And it's a nice sentiment that everything. So when we bring that recognition, and of course, Gaurang Prabhu was telling this in a very laughing way, that, but when we bring this consciousness that everything is belonging to Krishna, somehow should be used for Krishna service, then to remain uninfected while remaining in the material world is possible. Otherwise, it is not possible. This is the only way. Bhakti is the only way to remain uninfected. Otherwise, the bhoga tendency that everything is for my enjoyment is so very strong, it is practically impossible. So having explained all this, Prachinabarhi became illuminated. Wow, I have figured it out. Now he is convinced. And Narada Muni's personal association, can you imagine directly being instructed by Narada Muni? And he heard it in a very humble spirit. So it had a very powerful impact on Prachinabarhi. He was actually purified. He accepted. Purified in terms of his conclusion. Of course, he had to still do devotional service, but purified in terms of his mentality. He gave up the mentality of an enjoyer and he agreed that I must engage in pure devotional service. So Narada Muni went back to Siddhaloka. And then Prachinabarhi called all his ministers and he said, "My children have gone, the Prachetas have gone for performing austerities. I have no time to wait for them to come back. My Guru, Narada Muni, has instructed me to become fully detached from material enjoyment. Now I understood. I was wasting my time doing all these things, that the real goal of life is to surrender. So I'm going." And he left home and he went to Kapil Ashram. Kapilji's ashram was there to perform austerities. And Prachinabarhi, it is said, the Bhagavatam mentions that he eventually, through his following the instructions of Narada Muni, became fully purified from material contamination and attained full liberation and was able to be constantly engaged in the devotional, transcendental, loving service of the Supreme Lord. And he achieved ultimately the supreme destination. Maitreya Muni, who's narrating this pastime to Viduraji, he says that this pastime is actually very powerful. He says, whoever understands or explains this pastime to others, he gets certain very specific benefits. He becomes liberated from one subtle body. Salingena vimuchyate. He becomes purified and he sanctifies the material world. Bhuvanam punanam. The heart becomes purified. Atma Shaucham. He becomes liberated from all bondage. Mukta Samasta Bandha. He becomes elevated to the spiritual world. Adi Gachati Parameshtyam. Becomes relieved from bodily conception. Striyashrama Pumsat Chinno. And Chinno Amutra Samshaya. Becomes cleared from all doubts and misconceptions. As long as one is materially affected, one is bewildered in one's intelligence. One has so many doubts. One doesn't know actually what is to be done, what is not to be done. One is bewildered. When a person becomes situated in perfect knowledge, one becomes free from all doubts. In the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna again and again asks Arjuna, are you free from all doubts? Are you free from all doubts? Did you get it? Did you get the point? Only finally Arjuna says, Nashto moho smritir labdva tat prasadat maya achyuta. Stitosmi gata sandeha karishye vachanam tava. Stitosmi gata sandeha. All sandeha, all doubts are now gone. And what does one do when all doubts are gone? I will do what you told me to. Karishye vachanam tava. So when one becomes free from all doubts, one engages in the devotional service of the Supreme Lord with great determination. That is how one knows one who is purified. Only a purified soul can engage in devotional service of the Lord with determination. It is not possible for those. Bhogaishwarya prasaktanam taya parata chetasam vyavasayatmika buddhi samadhavana vidhiyate. And there are many, many verses in the Gita and Bhagavad around this theme. The key point is if you are still attached to material enjoyment, firm determination to engage in devotional service cannot arise. And that is why when we are in that infant stage of devotion, one must slowly cultivate in the association of devotees to hear and chant Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Listen to the Bhagavatam every day. Worship the Lord every day. Krishna Prasad, Anand Krishna Prasad. Especially months like Damodar. We're just about to do Damodar Ashtaka now. One should do this special activity to please the Lord. Because when the Lord becomes pleased, we are benedicted with the real wealth. The real wealth is the wealth of affection, devotion for the soul. That is real wealth. So that brings us to the end of this chapter. The whole pastime has not fully concluded because Prachinabarhi is delivered, but Pracheta's story is not completed. So there is one more chapter to go. And what happened to the Prachetas who were in the forest, who heard Rudra Gita from Lord Shiva and they were purifying themselves? So that story continues. That's the concluding chapter for this particular pastime. Actually, two chapters, sorry, my bad. The activities of Prachetas, chapter 30, and Narada instruct the Prachetas. And with those two chapters, we will conclude the fourth canto. So two more chapters too. Okay, so what we will do is, in the interest of time, we will first recite Damodar Ashtaka. After that, if there are any questions or comments, we'll take. So if you have any questions or comments, just hold them. Just in the interest of time so that everybody can participate in the Damodar Ashtaka. Okay, all good. So we will quickly, we still have around 10 minutes. So what I'm going to do is I have my Damodar lamp. So if you do not have one, you can either get one or if it is just too difficult, you can do it later in your own altar. But if you can do together, there's always great power in doing together, even though we are remote. Why? Because at a subtle, at a deeper level, we are still connected and we are still together. And the potency of doing it together is there. Okay, so if you can get a lamp, that is wonderful. So I'm going to sing and then I'll light my lamp. So I will sing the Damodar Ashtaka. I believe you can all see Sri Damodar Ji and Yashoda Maiya on the screen. So either you can pray at your altar or you can see here and do whatever is convenient for you. I'm going to recite the Damodar Ashtaka. You can also recite. You can keep your mic on difficult. You all sing in chorus. It will be a chaos on Zoom. So just sing along, but keep your mic on mute. And then if you can bring your lamp along, then you can offer it here, or you can offer it at your altar. Okay? And I hope you're all doing this every day, morning and evening, not just yourself, but all your family members. Please engage. This is a wonderful opportunity to engage not just ourselves. You all are devotees already, but engage your family members, your friends, relatives, colleagues, your colony watchman, your cards, your food delivery man, whoever, whatever way we can engage, Krishna will appreciate that. Because unknowingly, they will get a lot of benefit. So many individuals have become devotees simply by offering a lamp. So it was very powerful. Namamishwaram Sachidanandarupam Lasat Kundalam Gokule Brajamanam Yashodabhiyolukhaladavamanam Param Rishtamatyanta Todritya Gopya Rudantam Muhurnetram Yugmam Rijantam Karam Bhoja Yugmena Satankanetram Ushwasakam Patri Rekhanka Kantha Ita Graivam Damodaram Bhakti Badham Iti Drikswalila Bhirananda Kunde Swagosham Nimajantam Makhyapayantam Tadiyeshi Tadneshu Bhaktarjitatvam Punaha Prematastam Shatavriti Vande Varam Deva Moksham Namoksham Badimva Nachanyam Vrineham Vareshadapiha Idam Teva Purnatha Gopala Balam Sada Me Manasya Avirastam Kimanyai Idam Te Mukham Bojam Atyanta Nilai Vritam Kuntalai Snigdha Raktaischa Gopya Muhuschumbitam Bimba Raktadharam Me Manasi Avirastam Alam Lakshalabhai Namo Deva Damodar Ananta Vishnu Prasida Prabho Dukha Jalabdhi Magnam Kripa Drishti Vrishtyati Dimam Batanu Grihanisha Mamagyam Midhyakshi Drishya Veratmaja Uvadha Murtyai Vayadvat Vayamochitau Bhakti Bhajau Kritau Cha Tatha Prema Bhaktim Swakam Me Prayacha Namokshi Graho Mesti Damodareha Namaste Studamne Suradipti Dhamne Tvadiyodaraya Tha Vishvasya Dhamne Namo Radhikayai Twadiyai Priyayai Namo Nantalilaya Devaya Tubhyam Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare Jayo Radha Damodar Radha Damodar Radha Damodar Radhe Shri Radha Damodar Bhagavan ki Jai Damodar Mas ki Jai Samaveta Gaur Bhakta ki. Thank you very much, Hare Krishna. Any questions, comments?
Prabhu, Hare Krishna.
Yes, Anand Sundari Mataji. Sir, I can't hear you. fine. Anybody has any questions?
Yeah, Prabhuji, Hare Krishna.
Yes,
The last slide, Prabhuji, where it says that anyone who hears this pastime narrates to other will get benefits. Like, so people like who are in neophyte stage, what exactly does it mean, Prabhuji? Because we are not so pure to narrate.
So in any devotional activity, the benefit of the devotional activity is a function of the quality of the activity. So when we talk about quality, the quality of the activity is not the external quality of the activity, it is the internal quality of the consciousness. Correct? Yeah. For example, the Bhagavatam says, or across all scriptures says, that one holy name of the Lord is so powerful that one utterance of the Lord's holy name can burn away more sins that you can commit in your entire lifetime. So now you may wonder, oh, I'm chanting so long, my sins are not all gone away. So is the problem in the holy name? No, the problem is not in the holy name. The problem is in the quality of the name that we are uttering. The name will manifest its potency based on the purity with which the holy name is chanted. And that is true for any devotional activity. The more selflessly and the more with devotion, humility, and service attitude that we perform a devotional activity, to that extent the devotional activity becomes powerful. And every devotional activity can be unlimitedly powerful. So this is the potency of this katha. How much of this potency we are able to realize? It is said, if you hear with faith and submission. See, why Prachinabarhi was purified? How many of us after this class are ready to pack up and go? We all also heard, no? How many of you are already packing? I don't see anybody who has stepped up, closed the video, and on the way back went to the bedroom, opened the bag and packing. Huh? So why that is not having the same impact on us? So the problem is not in the potency of the katha. The problem is in the strong impact that the katha had, because the listener had the right receptivity, the right mood of the katha. So you understand, the quality can be very different. But the potential of the katha is this. Whether we can realize the potential depends on us. Do you understand?
Yes.
Yeah. But nonetheless, the power of the kathas are such that they will give us immense benefit if we listen with even a little faith. Little faith is important. If even a little faith, we will get huge benefit. If we listen with lot of faith, it will be immensely powerful.
Got it, Prabhuji.
Yeah. So same thing with offering a lamp, Why it is so powerful? It is so powerful. Of course, the Lord is giving benefit, but even that lamp offering, how much benefit we actually get depends on with what consciousness. In Krishna's Pasana, listening to one class, where in Braj, Krishna is so affectionate to his devotees and friends, and some of his friends, they gave him such a very, very simple gift on his birthday in Vrindavan. But Krishna feels so indebted. Oh, such a precious gift. This devotee friend of mine has given me this, not devotee friend, this friend of mine has given me this, Gopa has given me, and the Lord feels so indebted that he feels that, tells Mother Yashoda, I don't have anything in our whole house and in our whole wealth to give a return gift to my friend for this wonderful gift that he has given to me. Why? Because it is given with so much love. Krishna feels it so strongly. That's why even the simple offering of lamb, when it is done with love, it immensely pleases the Supreme Lord. Okay, anything else?
Good. Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Thank you. Hari Bol. So, also want to share that Damodar month, so please make an effort to, according to your capacity, organize Damodar programs in your home, in your communities. In Kuala Lumpur, we have a stall for Damodar in the Deepavali Carnival. Those who are in Kuala Lumpur can opt to go and do some services there. So all these options are there to purify ourselves and engage in the Lord's service according to your capacity. Please do that. And please keep track, excuse me, of the lamp offerings, and then please share with me towards the end of the month. Okay, so if there's nothing else, take your leave for now. Gratara Srimad Bhagavatam ki Jai, Shri Prabhupada ki Jai, Samaved Gaur Bhakta ki Jai, Damodar Bhagwan ki Jai. Thank you.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Thank you so much.
Yes, Adiji, Hare Krishna. Thank you.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you,
Hare
everyone.
Krishna, Prabhuji.
Thank you, Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Indulika Mataji. So I'll see you all on Wednesday.
Thank you. Hare
Thank you,
Krishna.
Mataji.
Thank you,
Hare
Prabhuji.
Krishna, Prabhuji.
Haribol, Rita ji, Sachiprama Mataji. So have a wonderful Deepavali also. Yes, Santanam Prabhu. So prepare nicely for Deepavali also. It's very soon, I think just a couple of weeks away. So it's a wonderful festival. So I will see you on Wednesday next week. We'll continue our discussion on Chaitanya Charitamrita. Okay.